Hello, and you're listening to Radio Clint City. I'm Dan, also known as It's One LD, and joining me on this episode, we have got KevinAFCA.
Hello guys, good to be back.
We also have Abigail Wyatt.
Hello there.
And this time, we also have a brand new guest, and he is none other than DUC-Puma.
Hello.
Before we get started, I just want to say a massive thank you for all the love and support which you gave on the first episode. The fact that we broke over 300 views, got over 100 subscribers, and countless comments. Seriously, the reception was mad, and I sincerely thank everyone who decided to give the first episode a listen. Coming up in today's episode, we are going to be talking about the New Bloods, the Revamped Legendary missions. We're also going to be discussing the potential possibility of even more Big 5 worthy cards being released. But before that, we kind of need to start this episode on a bit of a somber note, because it turned out on Monday that the beloved admin, Chaos, actually stepped down from admin of the game.
No, to be fair, Chaos Dragon did a lot for the game the last years. He's been involved ever since I started the game. So it's a well-known name in the community, and I think everybody knows him. And yeah, it's a shame to see an involved guy like him leave the game. Well, not leave the game, but just put down his staff function. What he did for the game was quite remarkable, and we should all thank him for that.
I think I first saw the announcement that he had sort of stepped down, not from him, but I think it was Issy who actually posted a little image of dragons leaving the nest, and I thought that was lovely. And also another quite wholesome thing which I saw after the announcement was that a lot of people posted sort of their own little tributes saying thank you to Chaos. I know both Kevin and we left comments on the spot. But also I saw that several users actually changed their name on Urban Rifles. So AKP Draco, he changed his name to Chaos Dragon 21, I believe. Izzy changed his name to Chaos Dragon 77. And then Queen being Queen changed his name, of course, to Chaos Dragon 69. And that was just something which I just thought was so great to see.
It's a good thing because it shows how people just they acknowledge what he did for the game, and yeah, it's a nice tribute to him.
He was actually the, I think, second admin to ever properly notice the stuff which I was doing on YouTube, leave comments, sort of was actually paying attention to what I was doing, and just that in itself really meant a lot to me. Like, someone who worked on the game would come out of their way to, see stupid little videos which I was putting out. Like, that was honestly so good.
See, the thing is, I only first heard about this yesterday, so the last 24 hours for me has just been like, well, that's happened, and I do agree with you. It's about the whole, paying attention to the community outside the game, like in terms of YouTube and that. And I honestly feel that I wouldn't be where I am right now, like the whole videos and stuff, if it wasn't for Chaos. I don't want to sound like I'm being over dramatic here, but it's kind of left a bit of a hole, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same, not gonna lie. I'm just thinking to myself, no, I'll miss you, Chaos Dragon. But don't worry, not everything is necessarily doom and gloom when it comes to staff members, because on the 4th, it actually got announced that there were going to be 2 new French moderators in the game, and then the day after that, it got announced that both Nak Akowiak and also friend of the podcast, AKP Draco, got promoted to moderators, so of course, massive congrats to them. With it being the New Bloods week, I thought it made most sense that we just go talk about them for a tiny bit. Sadly for this part, and totally not to ruin continuity, Kevin and Abby are away, but we've still got Puma, and also joining us, we've got a other new special guest, and his name is Skeni.
Hey guys, my name's Skeni. I'm being a moderator for the German community, and I'm happy being here today. Thanks.
And also nice birds in the background.
I mean, I'm really sorry. At least it's a nice podcast. You're hearing birds in the background, and you hear the wind and stuff. I mean, it's something special.
It makes it realistic.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if we get doing an actual interview where everything can happen.
Anyway, Puma, tell us all about the New Bloods.
So today we saw the release of Rhizome, Utam, Reagan, and Mascaranga, 2 Komboka, 1 Montana, and 1 Nightmare. And personally, in my opinion, Mascaranga only is a card that I will see use in Survivor, where Geist might be more played because he has like a conditional ability. But in other modes, I don't see him a lot of playtime. Maybe EFC if a SOA heavy week or season will happen. Regan is overall a very strong card with a strong ability. It's also a low star, so perfect for EFC. Utam, I don't really know what I think of her. Her ability is okay. She has a Sim Evo, so she might be useful in EFC, but I prefer other Komboka over her. And Rhizome is actually a pretty strong card with cancel opponent power and damage modification, and also has a 3-star, so I see him get some use.
I mean, my first thoughts was, I'll start with Rhizome first, that when I first saw him, I can't remember which Pokemon it is, but that just completely reminded me of...
Sudowoodo?
No, not Sudowoodo. It's if you look at the Alola form of Executor, like, it is just spot on, and as soon as I saw that, I just started laughing. Stats-wise, though, yeah, he's not really the best. Like, in past cards, we've seen that cancel opponents' param damage is a really decent thing. You know, Pandora is a card which many people love. But this one, I don't know if I see him being played all that much. Like, 7-4, very sort of standard stats for a 3-star, but apart from that, I don't really see him as being anything too special.
Regan, well, he's pretty good, but I mean, there is better 2-star cards in my opinion. For example, playing Glork with 2 stars. He's a full stop. You can ult him or just do many stuff with him. I don't see any point like using Regan, but that's just personal preference. I would say.
Yeah, for Regan, I kinda view them as being a upgraded version of Orlok, which I know is a card where, especially the newer players of Nightmare, they would always play him, and they would just always ult him, so it was like the most predictable card to face. But this one, it's got higher damage, it's only a 2-star, and also it's got a lower minimum, which means it's definitely far better than Orlok.
Regan is also like a better version of Phyllis. It's like the same power, same damage, same stars. Only Phyllis has a better life reduction, but a higher minimum as well. Where we in the past used Phyllis, now Regan can take the spot.
For the Komboka for Utam, in my opinion, Pavan is actually the better choice because having Soa over cancel opponent pills and life modification, sure, it's a nice thing, and she's having 1 damage more, but in my opinion, Soa is just more valuable.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely do agree. Like, I know in the past episodes, when I was saying, oh, this is my standout card for Komboka so far, I sort of thought, I don't see this guy leaving my deck anytime soon. And it's nice to see that even though there is now another 4-star which could potentially hold quite a good competition for his spot, I still would most definitely use that card over Utam. It's not bad stats, like, base-wise, but the ability, I don't know if it'll be necessarily the most useful in practice. But one thing I definitely do have to say is Mascaranga, he is my standout card for this entire release. In my opinion, like, this week hasn't really been the best, but Mascaranga I do really, really love. And the main reason why is because, in my opinion, this card is, like, quite perfect for what Montana needs. When I play Montana, the main thing which I always feel is that they're quite ability dependent, and without their abilities, they can be quite tricky to play. But this guy, stats-wise, pretty decent for a 5-star. Sure, there are better out there, but it's pretty solid. And then ability, the fact that it's a stop, I love that. And the equalizer, minus opponent life, minimum 0, that can just be absolutely deadly. And
well, I mean, he's not a bad card, but thinking of that, Montana is having lots of good cards. Looking at Iris Morana, and then looking to Desmond and other cards, and I don't see any use of him because, like, people were using mostly low star halves on Montana because basically they just have better low star cards. They have really good 4-star, really good 3-star. Figaro, for example. I think, if not wrong, Mona CR is free for EFC as well. I just think overall they need probably other cards, like for maybe 4-star again, or 3-star, because I don't see any point why someone would play Maskangara beside there's being played Soar really often or something. You have like lots of possibilities just going a low star half and then just um making use of the stars you have left for the other half, and then just making a better deck, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And just looking at him, he is a card where realistically, the only place he would be played would be Survivor Type 3, and that's about it. Like elsewhere,
Yeah.
I don't know where you would ever really decide to use him.
So, about the Revamped missions. Previously, the legendary missions, we got them once every week. There were a set of 5 missions, and when you completed them, you got 1 common, 1 uncommon, 1 rare, 333 crypto coins, and a legendary you didn't have left, or 7 credits. They changed that system now, and now the legendary missions are only once every 2 weeks. In the weeks there aren't any new bloods released, and they reduced it to 3 missions, slightly bigger missions and slightly more difficult missions, and they removed the rewards of a common and an uncommon card. My first feeling was like, yeah, it's good, you need to do less, but I also started thinking about when you're a newer player, you just need to start building your collection, and even something small like an uncommon and uncommon can just help you a huge step toward a deck you want, or just completing your collection. And yeah, that part kind of left a little, and the missions are less frequent. So yeah, I can understand some negative comments I read, because now we have less missions to do. Effectively, we got less rewards, because instead of 4 times in a month, we got it 2 times in a month, and the missions got tougher. Yeah, I don't necessarily disapprove this change, but it makes it a little bit more difficult for the newer players to complete them.
I personally love the new missions. I was waiting for missions like this because it got really repetitive. Like every week, the heal cards, the poison cards, the life cards. It got so repetitive and boring. And I wanted like more card specific or maybe clan specific missions, like back in the old days when legendaries were introduced. But I have to play side notes that reaching top 10 can be quite hard, and like only in the 2 weeks is something I don't really like. So there should be like tweaks, but I think stuff will eventually catch up on that.
One thing's for sure is that the missions which we have now are definitely far, far better than what LD missions were originally like. You know, you only had the ability to actually get that card, like, I think it was every few months or so. So the fact that, you know, these once quite difficult cards to get and quite infrequent cards to get has been improved is a massive, massive help. And I don't know, I do kind of agree, like, maybe every 2 weeks is a bit of a nuisance, and it's annoying that you can't collect all of them quite so quickly. But I don't know if this is necessarily the case, but I feel like maybe the main reason they reduced it was because they might have thought that players were now getting these cards maybe a tiny bit too quickly, so that's why they needed to step it down a bit. Yeah, and I mean, just the missions as a whole, I think you touched upon it, Kevin, but in general, they're not really that bad at all. But saying that, I don't think the LD missions have particularly ever been too difficult, because the ones for this week...
No.
Yeah, the ones for this week in particular were win 15 wives... win 15 wives, bloody hell, that's going to be quite a mad marriage. Win 15 lives in EFC with Pan, so... I think Pan is +3 life, so if you really wanted to just go hard in with those missions, then all you'd need to do is just have him in EFC, then all-pill him against your opponent, and then boom, you get you +3 lives. But yeah, there's that, and then Pan in himself, like, he's a decent card, you know, one which definitely you could work with, and one which I feel like you would want to play in a deck anyway. So it's good that they're not just saying, oh, you have to now use this random useless card which otherwise you wouldn't want to use and win missions with him.
Just thinking about it now, there's just one thing about the LD missions I want to say, and it's I've never liked how Urban Rivals kind of flip-flops in terms of using specific cards. Because back in the day when they first came about, the LD missions, I can't remember which card you had to use, but it would say, like, do such a thing with a specific card. And I have the feeling that because we're now going back to this whole, oh, here's a mission with a specific card, that you're just going to get all these people who, I'm not saying it's a big majority of them, most likely the minority, they're going to see that card in your deck and think, right, I'm going to end this whole man's career and basically overpill to make sure you don't get the mission progress.
Those guys are certified assholes. But it's not only that, but what we saw with back then with the old missions, and indeed what Abigail said, it also influences the market, because when they see, oh, Pen has a mission, you need Pen to complete the mission, the price is going to rise. And people who don't have Pen in their collection at the moment are not going to be too stoked about that to buy Pen.
However, borrowing cards became much easier. Like back in the days when legendaries were released, you had to buy them. Actually, now you can just ask a guildmate, like, can you put it in a guild bank? You didn't have a guild bank back then.
Yeah, that's very true, and that's something which I really do love about my guild.
That's a fair point, and to be honest, I did completely forget about that, so that kind of counterfeits my argument completely. Only not for the guys who don't have a guild. And for that guys, I would say get a guild.
Yeah, definitely do join a guild. That is a top quality piece of advice. Anyway, yeah, we've just talked about missions for quite a fair bit there, so I think it's time for something a tiny bit lighter. One thing which I thought would be funny would be just to read some of the comments which you guys left on the last video. Of course, if you have any thoughts on any of the topics which we discussed throughout the podcast, please do leave your comments, and then, who knows, maybe next week we'll respond to your comments. But I just picked a few which I personally liked, and first one came from Dwerg, who said, "Nice work, guys, although that Kevin guy is really annoying."
Dwerg, go fuck yourself. Nobody likes you.
Yeah, go fuck yourself.
Thank you for your comment. Hey, als je luistert, ik meen het niet, hè.
I left some nice comments for you, Kevin, in this, and I don't think I want to read any of them now. But yeah, second comment came from Urban Rifles GR, who, I don't think he minds me saying, is Chemist, and he said, well said, Kevin, about Falcon going CR.
Thank you, Chemist.
That was such an awkward response.
Okay, again, thank you, Chemist. Appreciate it, and yeah, just speak my mind, and I'm glad you liked it.
Alongside that, we also got Joseph and Ill Chaos both agreeing that they didn't like Black Eve and they thought that it wasn't a too good card.
Joseph and Ill Chaos, you are two very smart guys, at least 200 IQ. So yeah, keep watching.
Blackie is the best card, and I'm going to kick out of Dutch Urban Crew. Thank you, everyone.
We also got Hippo2, who said F for Wilo.
Hey.
And we also got Larry1311 saying, I'd love to see you interview players who have played for a long time, maybe since from the beginning. And to that, I do say, if there's anyone who's been playing from, I don't know, 2006, 2007, and fancies talking about their experiences, you know, both early game in the old days of Urban Rifles, and maybe comparing it to what things are like nowadays, get in touch and we'll happily have you on. And finally, the comment which personally was my favourite, which got left last week, was from Mela J, but they said, the podcast was actually very interesting and fun as hell. Honestly, I expected it to be a bit cringy, but it was really good. Hope you're going to continue this. And to that, I just have to say, I'm glad that we sort of subverted your expectation and it wasn't cringy. But yeah, thank you very much for that comment, and yeah, we're definitely going to be continuing this, hopefully, for many, many weeks to come. So those were the comments, and also whilst we're at it, and before we get back into, serious Urban Rifles discussions, one thing which I thought would be quite fun to reflect on is our favourite clans and cards. And Abby, since you're pretty much like the master when it comes to clans, lore, backgrounds, everything, I thought we might as well start with you first. So, what clans and cards are you particularly fond of?
Right, well, if we're talking clans in general, and now as I'm talking about this and the specific characters in other clans, I am expecting people to just go, Abby, you need better favourites, go away. Yeah, if we're talking about general clans, it's got to be the Montana. Because, like, they've got that whole mafia, Godfather, Scarface thing going on about them, and Godfather's, like, my favourite movie of all time. And the fact that their main colour is purple as well, it's such a gorgeous colour. I know I've said in the past videos about, like, oh god, Tino, I can't stand him, but even he looks kinda good in purple, I have to admit that. Yeah, also in terms of, favourite characters, gotta mention Jonas, of course, because back in the day, Abby had a very specific idea of what kind of guy she found attractive. And as I've said in the past, if it wasn't for Jonas, I probably wouldn't be playing this game now. So you can take that as a good thing or a bad thing. Rocket, because he's a Junkrat XP, and yeah, Junkrat's like one of my favorite video game characters of all time. Doc Ollie, because of the whole being able to relate to her. And I'm not talking about, oh, she's a ghost, haha. It's more the whole fact of I prefer dressing in like waistcoats and suits as opposed to dresses. And without going into too much detail, because of like my medical conditions, I'm also on a bit of a cocktail of medicines. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's messing with my body a bit. Zavelli. Now, Zavelli's one of those cases where I like her stats and the whole backstory she has. I've never been too much of a fan of Hellboy, which is what she's supposed to be a reference to. But yeah, there's just something about her that makes me think this is a precious goat child and I want to protect her, even though she looks more than capable of protecting herself. And I'm still a bit mad that she didn't win Miss Clint City last year. Then we got Figaro, who it's really an artwork thing, really. He kind of looks a bit like Waluigi, and I think he just looks adorable in general. I'm trying to remember who the artist is for Figaro, and I can't remember off the top of my head. I feel bad.
Yeah, that's Grelin.
Oh, Grelin. And then last but not least, because if I named all my favourite characters, we would be here like the entire day, is Nick, and that's more or less because of another video game reference, because he's based on Nick Valentine from Fallout 4. And I think he may be the first Fallout reference we've had, and that makes me really happy because he's like, in my opinion, the best companion in that game. And I have seriously just been on autopilot this whole time, so I don't know if I've made any sense throughout any of that. So if I haven't, I apologise.
I mean, I'll try and remember everyone who you mentioned, but Montanas as a whole, I agree, I do like them. The prominence of the colour purple is great because if you go into, I don't know, colour semiotics and all that stuff, purple does kinda connote wealth and power, so it's very fitting for a Montana clan. And they're one who I've played a whole load because I remember when I was first getting into DT, this was sort of a time when Rescue, they were the most dominant clan, so I just played Montana to counter them and had an absolute blast. Cards-wise, Jonas, yeah, I gotta admit, he's a bit of a hunk, not gonna lie. Zavelli, Abby, you know more than anyone that I like to bash on Freaks quite a lot and say that they're the worst clan. That Zavelli is definitely a step in the right direction for the clan, and one who does certainly incentivize me into actually playing Freaks. But the other ones, just in general, yeah, was definitely a pretty damn good selection, and I can't really fault any of them. Puma, who are your favourite clans and cards out there?
Oh, my favorite clan is the Junta, but that's because I have a massive respect for people in the army, so it's like more personal preference. And it was also like the first clan I completed, and with the missions, with the cards, like back in the days. But that's actually the only clan I really like. I don't really care about clans, cards, or backstory.
Fair enough. Complete polar opposite responses there. Like Abby going into full depth about the cards and why she loves them, and then Puma's just like, it's just a card, innit? Who cares? But I suppose coming back to what you were saying, Lashunta, for anyone who's ever watched me attempt to win DT and completely fail, they're the ones who I do main in DT, so from doing so, I have gained an absolute love for the clan, and they're just really, really fun. And I might as well shout out a card from the clan which I particularly love, and that is none other than Spades. He's just a card which is so underrepresented, and he's so good. Sure, he's only 7-1, and that's might be a bit problematic, but when you consider, Lashunta's bonus is +2 damage, then he becomes a 7-3. Match that with his ability, which is, +1 pills, it means it's just super handy. Like, he's one who you can chuck into a fight, play a decent amount of pills, and then get a fair few back, and I just like playing him. It's just a shame that, if you come up against any SOA, then he becomes a bit redundant. And another card which comes to mind to shout out for, my favourites, is Corvus. And he is 8-3 +3 pills, and he is a skills card. And he's one which, again, mostly just down to ability alone, I just absolutely love. When I first started playing on this account anyway, for whatever reason, the first clan which I decided to invest in and buy as many of the cards I could, I just thought, let's go for these guys. And Corvus was one of the cards which I played very heavily in one of the first few decks which I built. And I just found it amazing that I could play this card, play 32 attack on him, and then if I won, then essentially not have played any pills, and then I still had 12 more pills to play. That just blew my mind, and I just loved that. His artwork is beautiful. Sadly, I don't know who did it. And also the fact that now he's a semi-evo only means that he's even more playable, and he's one which I highly, highly recommend you do play, just because I think he's really fun. You've heard from both me, Puma, and Abby that you've probably been thinking to yourself, where's Kevin been? Why haven't we heard about his opinions? And that's because, essentially in the last episodes, he just said them anyway. So Kevin, of course, is a massive skills fan. His favourite card is Sailor CR. Unless he fancies talking about why that's his favourite, there you go, that's his response to the question. So
the reason I'm just that invested into the clan is because when I started back in 2009, it was the clan which was the newest. So yeah, it was the most prominent in the new blood packs. So yeah, I got a lot of them. I saved for a lot of them, and I when I got level 15, so pretty fast, I unpacked Salus Collector. After that, I don't know what went wrong, but I just played skills exclusively for 4 years. And yeah, I just like the clan. Actually, this is not going to be in the podcast anyway, but yesterday it was kind of funny because it started with Hespera. It was my birthday yesterday. I turned 25, and Hespera heard that, and he just dumped 25 blackies in my private sales.
that was just glorious, and
I
I gotta admit, I got
like you fucker.
I did actually get a message from Hespera, and he was like, hey, do you have any blackies? It's for a good cause. And I was one of those 25 cards, so you're welcome. Happy belated birthday, Kevin.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it. I've now on iClinch the most lot of blackie. You have the lot finder, and I went from 0 to 29.
That's just glorious, and I do kind of hope that I do kind of hope that collection just grows and grows, just to spite you. So, if anyone...
It's just the meme has to live on.
The meme has to live on, so if anyone fancies, spending some Clints for a good cause, then feel free to drop a blackie in Kevin's private sales, I guess.
We'd agree that this part wasn't going to be on the podcast, right?
Yeah, no, it totally wouldn't be in the podcast.
Well, you're the editor. We'll see.
And with us all talking about our favourite clans and cards, of course, in the comments below, feel free to tell us what your favourite clans and cards are, because I'd definitely be interested to find out what they are. Also, at the time that we're recording this podcast, we received essentially a breaking news update. We've just found out that soon, the arenas which you originally had to pay credits for to unlock will then now become unlockable just by having a percentage of that clan instead. So, like the little banner displays which you get in-game. And that's something which is quite a shock. Saga has already stated that buyers will get refunded for all the credits which they did spend to get these banners. But yeah, it's certainly very, very interesting to see something like that happen.
For me, it's just a visual thing. You only see it in-game, so it doesn't affect my gameplay for me personally. It's a nice touch, but yeah, that's all it is for me. It's like nice, but whatever.
I bought one of those arenas, so I'm actually glad I'm getting a refund. And I actually really enjoyed the arena, so I'm glad that they become free for everyone, for the people who are not interested in investing money in urban rivals or just don't want, because those 110 credits are actually pretty expensive if you ask me. So I'm actually glad they become free.
I was just gonna ask, does anyone remember what percentage it is to unlock the like little HUD?
I
I
want
think
to...
it
if
was
I'm correct.
70.
I'm wondering if it's gonna be about the same percentage.
I think it's gonna be like 80%.
I will also just say, as a kind of not so much a plea to you all, but please release the Montana one sooner rather than later, because that is the one I am waiting for.
Please release them at the same time. I'm not gonna wait like the skills big for this one to release as last as well. And now I can't threaten Chaos Dragon anymore, so I'm gonna threaten Draco.
And speaking of, clans and cards, there's the possibility that every clan might receive a second wave of Big 5 cards.
Well, I found it on a forum, and I couldn't find the forum anymore. Chaos Dragon made a comment, guys, we know the 3 Big 5s missing. After those clans get their Big 5 power cards, they might consider a second wave of big cards. I read that comment and I was like, is that really necessary or not? Because what we see now, most of the big 5 cards are pretty damn expensive, which is logical because they're some of the best cards in the game, mostly made for survivor mode because all of them are banned in EFC. But on the other side, I was like, yeah, you have one very hard obtainable card, and it's going to get progressively harder because if you don't start out now, we've seen it with Cannibal Joe, we've seen it with Bumape, they just turn collector pretty fast, so the price is getting insanely high. And I kind of have the feeling if they were to release a new wave of big cards, they're gonna be treated the same.
I think there doesn't need to be a second wave of big cards. Like you said, they only be used in Type 2 or maybe like for a short period of time in EFC or DT. But I also think that, as you already see, is that a lot of cards aren't being used anymore because they're just too weak compared to all these new big cards. Like it totally ruins Type 2. It's made about who draws the big card instead of who has like the most skill. And that kind of ruins the purpose for me, for someone who plays a lot of Type 2.
I mean, more so, I would throw the argument that the reason that we've gotten all these big equivalent cards for every clan, and it's one which I feel like the admins themselves have stated, hey, this is why we're doing it. But the reason we're getting these cards is not necessarily for Type 2, but more so for good old Type 3, so the Survivor modes. Of course, if we go back to before Survivor Type 3 was even a thing, the main two dominant clans in that game mode was Uppers and Skeels. Match that with maybe, I don't know, Morph and Amber or even Fault. Like, that's pretty much next to what everyone played, and...
First thing, you said Uppers and Skills, right? Were the most dominant in Survivor Type 2. It was Sacrom instead of
Oh,
Skills.
sorry. I do mean Skills, yeah, of course.
Skills, yeah.
I meant Sacrom and
Skills
Uppers.
weren't that dominant at all.
Yeah, sorry, I most definitely did mean
and
Sacrom. All the top players, more or less, played that to do well in Survivor Type 2. So they obviously took that away. They need to think, hey, how can we switch this up and make it not so dominant? That's why they changed it to Type 3. And In my opinion, I think the inclusion of these new Big 5 cards is to make the other clans a bit more appetizing to play. These new, big, fancy, expensive cards in return have made it so that a game mode where players mostly only played 2 clans and that was it. Now you get a whole load of variety.
The only thing I want to know is how available are they going to be? Like, how easy is it to obtain them? Are they going to be in packs or only missions, or are they going collector immediately? Like, it's been so varying between like packs and missions, or like only with Colosseum, like you saw with Vulcan and with Mappe, or like no Atkinson. So I think if you want to release a new big wave, you should be consistent with how you release them and how obtainable they are.
Yeah, for sure. And, considering the recent events, I do feel like any Powerhouse card one, which is going to be an absolute tank, Urban Rifles are definitely now going to be very aware of how to release it just because of certain examples which have been, slightly mishandled.
So now we're still talking about the Big 5. I also want to make my case for making the original Big 5, being General, Lysateria, DJ Core, Kiki, and Guru, all Mythic. When we all started back in the day, these cards were the Big 5. Everybody wanted them. Everybody played events, played tournaments. You had the lottery back then, and everybody wanted the Big 5. And the Big 5 is a huge part for me personally, a little bit of nostalgic, in the history of Urban Rivals. And now seeing all the bigs coming with Bemape, Ymera, and also those cards getting promoted to collector, I feel like it's time to give the original Big 5 the status again which they deserve and move them up to the rank of Mythic. And with that, all the other Big 5 cards cannot reach that level. For me, it's mainly a nostalgic request, but I would very much like to see that happen.
Yeah, and it's one thing which partially has happened so far, because on the 15th of April, that's when General CR went MT, and that day, it's quite a big shock to me, because I don't know why, but I always kind of assumed, for some reason, that although there is now this Mythic rank, these Big 5 cards, I never really ever thought that they would ever become MT, and
I agree on that. It was a big shock, but I saw it and I immediately liked it because it's just restoring the Big 5 cards at the place in the history of the game where they belong. Just being at the top of the most expensive. Let's kick down Scarlet and Manon Mythic because nobody likes them. They're unplayable. So why the hell are they so expensive anyway? But just restore the original Big 5, put them at the Mythic rank, put them at the 5 most expensive cards again, and just keep their spot in Urban Rivals history. And what you said, yes, they started with General. I loved it, and I can't wait for the rest to follow.
I really hope they become Mythic just because of the nostalgia reason.
Yeah, I do think it is time, and hopefully within the next however long, they'll go MT one by one, and then we'll see Peace and Order restored, and we'll see that, the Big 5 are back at the top. But anyway, with all things being said and done, I believe that is the end for this episode of Radio Clint City. So once again, if you have any thoughts or comments on anything which we've discussed in this podcast, please do leave them in the comments down below. And like we did today, maybe next week we'll read and respond to your comment on the next episode. I've been Swan, and in case you've forgotten, joining me on this episode of Radio Clint City, we had Kevin.
Bye guys, and until next episode.
Also joining us, of course, we had Abigail Wyatt.
Hey guys.
And finally, and certainly not least, the newbie of the group, there was Puma.
Goodbye, everyone.
And it's a goodbye from me as well. Hope you enjoyed, and see you next week.